Welcome in to the Fantasy Football Playmakers Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Popolars. You can find me on Twitter at PopesFFH. Joined as always with my co-host, Ryan, who you can find on Twitter at Mackie_FFB. How's it going, Ryan?
Not too bad, man. Like I said, I came home a little surprised when dog got out of his crate after having a soccer practice with my kids and had to rush around and try to hurry up and get back here on time, but it was a little late, but sorry for holding you guys up.
Yeah, unacceptable. We are joined today as we unveil, I will say, our new name as someone stole ours on Apple Podcasts. A little bitter about it, but I think our logo's a little better now, personally. But we're joined by a fellow yards per contributor, Mike, who you can find on Twitter at FF_Dirty Mike. What is up, Mike?
Hey, appreciate it. Nothing really much. Looking pretty forward to the weekend. We got a 4-day coming up at work, so pretty excited. My Friday's moved up to Thursday. My Monday's moved back to Tuesday.
Nice. I got a 3-dayer,
All right.
But 4 is impressive. I like that. I know a lot of people at work who took off like the next 3 days. So I'm gonna be like one of 3 people at work. I'm like, this is great.
It would be good.
It's so boring.
It'll be fun.
But yeah, before we dive into anything here, Ryan has a word from our sponsors here for this episode.
Yeah, so this is brought to you by King Fantasy Sports. So go check out their draft guide, draft kit, get the advantage over your league mates this draft season, do the right preparation, and start your season off right. You'll get rankings, breakouts, busts, values, and sleepers. Have some funky settings, learn how to make your own projections. Stop sitting on the sidelines and buy it now. Until the end of May, it's only $7.19, after which it's $8.99. Use our promo code PLAYMAKERS to get an additional 10% off. So we're talking less than $10 to get everything you need in your arsenal to not just compete, but dominate your leagues this season.
Nice. Definitely check out King Fantasy Sports. Well, let's just dive right into it. I got some news right before we came on here. Jeff Wilson, sidelined for meniscus tear, 4 to 6 months. How do we feel, guys? Who are we targeting in this backfield now that was obviously murky and unfortunately has gotten a little bit less murky with the injury? Who do we want here? Is it Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, or Elijah Mitchell? Mike, why don't you start us off?
I like Elijah Mitchell here just for the costs here. I'm not a big Trey Sermon believer. Not that I don't think he can do it. It's just I feel like everyone's just enamored by those 2 games he had and his his freshman year. So Elijah Mitchell's getting the buzz right now in camp. Everyone gets hurt on that roster. He's going to get his shot. So he's a value. I'll just go with Elijah Mitchell.
I like that. Ryan, how about you?
No, I completely agree. I mean, you never really know who's going to come out of that backfield from week to week. I feel like if Mostert's healthy, I feel like he's probably the guy they're going to lean on the most because they probably trust him the most. But like Mike said, I mean, you can't really beat the value for Elijah Mitchell right now. I mean, he's going undrafted in some startups league or not startups or rookie drafts, and I mean, I'm not a huge Sermon fan either, but I feel like the draft capital he'll probably get first crack at it unless Elijah Mitchell really shines in camp. So yeah, I'm all over Mitchell with his current value right now.
Yeah, I mean, according to DLF, obviously this is before the injury, but I mean, Sermon's going as like running back 30, Mostert's 34, and Mitchell is way down there. So I like that option too. I think Raheem Mostert's the guy to own personally, like for right this second. But I agree with you guys. I think that Elijah Mitchell's definitely going to get a shot this year. One more quick question. Julio Jones, we saw the drama there with Shannon Sharp and calling him up live, possibly. We're not sure. I don't know if anybody's seen whether or not that was truthfully live or if that was something planned, but we've also seen that he's narrowed it down. So where do we think he's going, guys? Tennessee, New England, or do you think he's staying in Atlanta? Ryan, how about you start us off with this one?
I personally don't want to see him in Tennessee or New England. I'm kind of hoping that he stays. As a Bills fan, I don't really want to see him in a place. I'd rather see him stay in the NFC. But for fantasy purposes, I feel like New England would probably be the best fit for him because Tennessee's already got their alpha in A.J. Brown. New England doesn't really have that number one guy there, and I feel like he would just get absolutely peppered with targets. I've heard a lot of good things so far from Cam Newton's camp about how he's looked, and he's kind of gone into the offseason and really adjusted his mechanics and things like that to try to get back to somewhat of his prior form. So if I have to choose a spot for him to go, I guess it'd be New England for fantasy purposes, but I really don't want to see him go there. I really want to see him want to go either place, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I like Atlanta the best. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I like seeing him at the Titans. I think they need a number 2 there, which could be AJ Brown if Julio shows up. But the Patriots don't really have their established quarterback. Mac Jones will take over sometime, but I don't think I'm going to see the prime Julio that we all love watching. I think we can see him again for like Ryan Tannehill. He's going to throw it out. We saw what he did with Corey Davis and AJ Brown, whereas Cam Newton couldn't support a WR4, I think. Last year, I don't know where Jacoby Myers finished, but I think it was in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not very good. Let's put it that way. I think Cam Newton really struggled last year, and I'm not sold on Mac Jones yet. I think at some point he will take over. So I agree. I think fantasy purposes wise, either Tennessee or Atlanta are probably our best options here.
Sorry. The Patriots got a little crowd this offseason too, whereas Tennessee's just AJ Brown.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I know where you stand for Des Fitzpatrick, but we'll probably get to that later.
Yeah, you know, it would kill my planting of a flag that I planted a little while ago. So, but let's dive right in here with the Indianapolis Colts, guys. So I think Indy probably is one of these teams in this probably group here that is almost like the Titans, where they didn't make too many moves. They obviously brought in Carson Wentz, who was quarterback 22 last year. My question for you guys is can he return to QB5 form like he was in 2017 under Reich? Mike, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, I have a question for you guys. Returning back to form would be like QB 15, 16? Like what range for you guys would you say that he bounced back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, like good spot, 12 to 15. Obviously, like I said, in 2017, he was 5. I don't see him ever getting there again. No. But I think I would say 15 would be like, I'd say, okay, yeah, Wentz seems like he's pretty much back.
If the line is QB 15, then yeah, I can see him getting there. I would have liked to see them add more pass catchers to help with that. But yeah, I believe he can.
Ryan?
Yeah, 12, 15 seems about right. I mean, he doesn't have that rushing upside that the top guys do, so I feel like he would have to do it all with his arm for the most part. So yeah, 12, 15 seems about right, where you'd be like, okay, yeah, he's a viable option against. I feel like people just aren't. There's a lot of people out there that still aren't touching him because of last season, and I think that's kind of overblown.
Yeah, I mean, let's just kind of like shift from that to the wide receivers who we had mentioned. I was a little surprised seeing, obviously they lost out on Galladay, but I was surprised they didn't bring in another wide receiver like you guys had said. I know there wasn't a ton out there on the free agent market necessarily, but I mean, obviously it proves that they're pretty happy with their rookie from last year, and Michael Pittman, who finished as a wide receiver 79, who kind of came on at the end of the year. And then they have Paris Campbell, who has been injured the last couple. And then T.Y. Hilton, who was a wide receiver 42. Out of these three, who do we think is going to be the most viable for our fantasy purposes with Wentz under center? Mike?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Pittman here. I'm taking him in a lot of drafts right now. He's a big upside pick. I think he's going to be the clear WR1 on that roster. And I think that team is a pretty complete team. Like it could be a Super Bowl contender team. So I wanted Michael Pittman on my roster. He's 6'4", 220. He profiles well too, because Carson Wentz likes to throw to the big body receivers, and that's what the Colts have stacked up on their roster. They got Michael Pittman, Mo Alley Cox, and Mike Strachan, 7th rounder. I don't know if you're a fan of him, but he's also big bodied. So I like Michael Pittman here. I think he's gonna, I'm not sure, break out, but I'm definitely looking for him to step up. He looked good down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that. I think though personally, like T.Y. Hilton right now is a crazy value in a lot of drafts. Like, I know that he's not, I mean, obviously he has probably maybe a year, maybe 2 possibly, but like in a redraft, or even not even redraft, I mean, redraft too, but like a dynasty startup right now, you're getting him real late in drafts. Like people are just avoiding him. And I think that T.Y. Hilton could have a pretty good season this year, obviously, because Wentz has a stronger arm than Philip Rivers does. And I like you said, I like Pittman too, but I think T.Y. Hilton's a great value at where you're getting him right now. You're getting him real late, and he's the possibility to be the wide receiver 1 still, because he's proven he can be in Indy. So I like that. Personally, I mean, I like Pittman too as like a dynasty play, but Hilton, even if you're in like you're going into your dynasty startup and you're like, I want to try and win year one. I mean, he's a great late option to grab like T.Y. Hilton or say Cole Beasley. Like those guys are falling really far. So I would keep an eye on T.Y. Hilton for like a late round grab there. I think he could like fall into favor with Carson Wentz personally.
Absolutely.
Ryan?
No, I agree. T.Y. would be my choice here, especially in a redraft format, just because just while I was doing research for this, I saw that him and Carson have already got like a little chemistry going. They said their timing's on pretty well. He said he's throwing the ball exceptionally well for the most part. Obviously, he's got some timing issues, but it seems to me from what I was reading that T.Y. fits that mold where Carson wants to hurry up and get the ball out, and that's kind of T.Y.'s thing where he's able to just get open relatively quickly, and that offensive line is good. And if you look at the stats for Carson's career, you want to keep him protected. Like his QBR is in the 90s when he's got protection, and when he's getting blitzed and he's getting hurried, his QBR just plummets, and it's something like 60 or something like that, something low. So I think T.Y. would be my target here, especially in redraft, but I'm perfectly fine with Pittman and Dynasty as well, especially if you're not really a contending team.
So let's move on to a position that Carson Wentz personally liked a lot in Philadelphia, and that's the tight end position. I feel like this room seems like you would want Jack Doyle, as he's always been an established guy there in Indy, but as of last season, Mo Alley-Cox kind of took over as far as a season-ending total. Mo Alley-Cox finished as the tight end 29. Doyle was 40. However, they also added Kyle Granson. Now, for you guys, do we want any of these guys? If so, who's the one that you want? Ryan?
I mean, in Dynasty, I really like Kyle Granson. I don't know if you guys look too much into him, but he started at Rice, transferred after his coach got fired and went to SMU. And he's 6'1", 240, so he's not like your prototypical tight end. He's not probably going to stay in line and block or anything like that. So he's going to be a receiving tight end. He lined up in the backfield. He lined up in the slot for SMU. And he profiled really well. He's in the 83rd percentile for his burst score, ran a 4.69 40, 79th percentile agility score, 67th percentile dominator, 86th percentile yards per reception, 97th percentile breakout age. In his last two seasons, he had 78 targets, almost 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's got that raw ability that you like to see from a tight end, and I feel like he's going to be a good stash, a good dynasty stash, and maybe he shines in camp where he just takes that job over completely because of his athletic profile. But I'm just not sure if I can trust any of them to be a starter for me immediately, to be honest with you. I'm not sure that none of them are difference makers at this point in time anyways.
Mike, do you feel like any of these three guys could kind of like break into that difference maker category? Personally, I feel like Mo Alley-Cox is going to be the guy who kind of steps it up there, but who do you think?
Yeah, Mo's my guy here. I don't want to take any of them, though. Let me start off with that. But if I had to take one, I would take Mo here. I don't like drafting rookie tight ends unless they're like highly toted, just because every year in fantasy, every all season, we are looking at the hype for tight ends. There's always those like dark horses people are looking for. And continuously, it's
they
like tight end 6.
Disappoint us, right?
Yeah, tight end 6 and tight end 12 is like a difference of 20 points. So I'd rather take dart throws somewhere else than tight ends. And I'm also pretty impatient too. I don't like to let them sit that long. There's always waiver wire guys popping off. I gotta get that guy. So
yeah, the patience is not a good thing in fantasy football for tight ends. It's just like 1 year, and if you ain't helping me, you're gone. I don't, don't waste the pick. And that's my opinion. But obviously, aside from Kyle Pitts, don't take that back.
I thought Mo was incredibly efficient last year. I thought it was a shame when Trey Burton came back and Jack Doyle came back. I think he deserves a shot. So I hope to see him take an uptick in targets this year.
Yeah, and I think like you alluded to earlier there, Wentz loves those big body guys, and I feel like Mo Alley-Cox could definitely take that spot over here. So I think, like you guys had mentioned too, like all three of them, I'm not like rushing to grab them. If I'm playing in a tight end premium, maybe I'm grabbing one of these guys to stash more or so. But I don't think either of these three, at least at the moment, are going to be any viability to you in a 12-team or 10-team league at the moment. Yeah. Let's talk about, I think, what everybody's been waiting for as far as the Indianapolis Colts go. Let's talk about this backfield that for me is a little murky. I think it's going to be not as clear cut as everybody thinks. But let's talk about it. It's obviously JT versus versus Hines. JT finished as the RB6 last year with 16.9 per game in PPR leagues. However, his last 5, he averaged 26 points per game. In this point, he had a larger snap share. So my question to you guys is, do we feel like JT is either A, it was a weaker schedule and that's why he produced more, or is it B, because he obviously had more opportunities, or C, is he kind of almost Derrick Henry-esque, where as the season goes on and he just gets more and more touches, he improves that way? Mike?
Yeah, I'm in on JT here. I really am. I think he's got the talent. He just had to get used to the league type of thing. COVID was a shortened off season. It was a weaker schedule. He needed that, but he also did play Pittsburgh too in that weaker schedule. And he was efficient. It's not like he was efficient early on too. He just didn't get the touches or the snap percentage, which is what we're all concerned about. And his vision was pretty questionable at the start there.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting if you actually go back and look at his fantasy points per game. If you just break that down, he actually was the storyline is he was very bad at the beginning of the year, and he really actually wasn't. He had a lot of double-digit fantasy point weeks, but then it was this span right in the middle of the season. Something happened. I don't know if there was injury or he just kind of got, like you said, maybe the game caught up to him a little bit and he got a little bit kind of confused for a little while, where he had this very 3-4 week span where he only had single-digit points. I think people freaked out. But I agree. I mean, I like JT. I just personally think that it's still going to be a lot like it was last year. And I think that JT is going to have a struggle to reach the top 5. Just because I feel like they like Nyheim Hines and he does very well at what he does. So I feel like they want to use that running back by committee. And I think that JT is definitely a top 10 this year, but I feel like top 5 is tough for him. Ryan, do you feel like he can reach that top 5 this year?
Yeah, I do. So sorry, I was just looking up real quick because you had mentioned you didn't know what exactly caused his dip in production or whatever. So I'm just looking on Sleeper here. Those games that he had, that middle of the road there, he was at Detroit, Baltimore, at Tennessee. He didn't play more than 33% of the snaps in those 3 games that he had single-digit fantasy points. So, I don't know why that is. I don't know why exactly they took him off the field. I don't know if he was injured or maybe he just didn't.
Yeah, they claimed he had an ankle injury. It wasn't reported at first, but it was a designator, where it's kind of in the shadows. And then they come out after the fact saying, "Oh, well, I was hurt," and then they gave him time off.
Yeah, because he had that run there where those last 5 games was after a week off. So after those. So
yeah, after those 3 games, he got up to 55%. Didn't play against Tennessee, played 48% against Houston, and then his snap share was higher than 57% for the rest of the season. And he scored 30 against Las Vegas on only 58% snap share. So if he can stay productive and stay in that 58, 60, 65% range, which I know people probably aren't going to like to hear because they're probably going to want to hear him be on the field for a lot more than that. But the fact of the matter is that they do like Nyheim Hines. So, but I think that he can be efficient enough to finish as a top 5 running back with that offensive line. I know they lost Costanzo, but they're getting Eric Fisher, who's coming off an Achilles injury. So the offensive line is still solid. I feel like he could definitely be a top 5 back as long as he gets a little bit more receiving work and Nyheim Hines doesn't take too much away from him in that aspect.
I could see Hines moving to the slot too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe he could. I feel like I was talking to actually on Twitter Jacob Sanderson there for a little bit. I mean, he's a big Indy fan, and he actually isn't a crazy pass catching back. It's portrayed that way, but he actually is a pretty efficient runner. So I don't know if they'll ever really move him to the slot like that. I mean, maybe they could, but I just feel like they just want to use both of them and kind of play whoever has a hot hand. So if JT can stay hot, I think there's that potential. But I still feel like top 5 is going to be tough with some of these guys coming back. And I feel like for me, I'm out on JT as far as his price. I just feel like in startups and or to go acquire him at the moment, he's so high that I feel like I could go and get a Saquon Barkley or a CMC for almost the same price and get 2 years out of them at who are pretty much guaranteed top 5, in my opinion. I just feel like both those guys have proven it more than JT has personally. But
So you would rather Saquon over JT?
personally, yes. But the only reason is, and I'll say this, and this is why I'm going to defend it, is that I feel like when I'm playing, I'm looking at like a 2-year window, and I feel like Saquon's still the offense in New York versus like I feel like JT kind of is the offense in Indy, and like they do run it through there, but we do have a new offensive coordinator. And with Wentz, like how much more are they going to throw? You know what I mean? Is it going to be a little bit less run heavy? But my mind could change real quickly depending on how they use him. I feel like if they come out and they are using Taylor more in the passing game, or he's seeing that like 60% snap share, like then my opinion might change. And if Barkley looks like he lost a step, yeah, it might change. But at the moment, I still like Saquon better than JT. That's just a personal preference, I guess.
Okay.
But I think the talent's pretty close. So
I'm curious to see what that offense looks like with an alpha receiver in Galladay now too, though, because like Barkley, I don't know the exact number, but he had to have been facing a top 5 box number in terms of defenders. So,
and I mean, the argument could, yeah, I mean, I can totally agree with that. And I think the argument could be made the same though for JT. Like last year, I mean, Philip Rivers didn't have the strongest arm. So like, I feel like they probably had a decent amount of loaded boxes. You know what I mean? They're a run heavy team and teams knew that. So I think if Wentz can come out and throw a little bit better, I mean, JT could have lighter boxes to face, which could be something that is something to monitor, I guess, as the season goes on. Let's move on to the Houston.
I just think teams are going to dare Wentz to throw a little bit more than like, especially initially. Like initially, they're going to see, okay, are you Wentz from the past, or are you Wentz from last season? You know what I mean? Like they'll probably still stack the box, and if Wentz starts slinging the ball over the place, then yeah, I agree that JT will definitely start seeing a lot more open boxes there.
Nice. Let's move on to the Houston Texans here. I think that this is a team that has a lot of question marks, and a team that might be viable via fantasy as far as wide receivers go, because they're going to be playing from behind a lot personally. But the big question here is obviously Deshaun Watson. Do we think he plays, guys? Let's start with you, Mike.
No, not for this team at least. I can see him playing midseason for somebody else, but he's not going back here. It's Tyrod Taylor's show until a trainer punctures his lung. But I'm not really looking into their pass catchers either, because Tyrod Taylor has only thrown a maximum of 430 targets for 2 of his seasons, and he's never passed 3,100 yards, and he's never passed for over 20 touchdowns. So I don't want any receiving option from there for as far as redraft goes. And I think they'll throw in some Davis Mills too. I think they'll be so far behind, they'll be like, let's see what we got in Davis Mills.
Yeah, I mean, I agree there. I think that I still like Tyrod Taylor enough that I'd be in on Brandon Cooks, and that's about it. After that, it gets a little dicey because, like you said, I mean, I am obviously here in Buffalo and a Bills fan, and I saw Tyrod when he got his shot. And like, Tyrod's a decent deep ball thrower, so I feel like if Cooks can win that way, and I feel like he might be able to at least be viable that way with more big plays. But I agree. I think Deshaun Watson, I just feel like it's tough to see him get traded. I know he doesn't want to go back. I just feel like his situation makes it hard for the Texans to trade. Like you said, though, like mid-season, maybe there could be a move or something as more of his legal situation gets clarified. Right. But I agree. I feel like Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans may not be a thing anymore. So, Ryan, how do you feel? Do you think Watson has any chance of coming back to Houston?
I honestly don't know. Like I've been trying to like rack my brain around it, and I honestly just don't really have a straight answer, just because they're at such a stalemate right now because of the legal situation and all that. You can't, as a new GM, a new head coach and all that, you can't just trade away your franchise quarterback for like 1 first-round pick or just something like minuscule like that. Like you can't trade somebody that talented away for that little when you first get there. But at the same time, he clearly doesn't want to be there, clearly doesn't want to play for Houston again. So it's just, I honestly don't know. I feel in my heart, I don't think he's back because there's just too many things going against that. especially they just picked up 3 different quarterbacks this offseason so far to try to find some sort of replacement for him. So they're definitely prepping as if they aren't going to have him. But I mean, if he's there, he led the league in yards last season, despite Will Fuller missing time and having a crapshoot of wide receivers after that. So I mean, if he's there, yeah, the receiving core becomes relevant again. But I'm just not sure he's there.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. So I mean, Mike had alluded to saying that it's Taylor's team. Do we think that Davis Mills and or Jeff Driscoll could take that away from Tyrod if Watson doesn't start, or do we think it is, like Mike had said, that it is Tyrod Taylor's team? How about you, Ryan? Start it off.
I honestly don't see any reason for them to start Tyrod Taylor, to be honest with you. Like they're not going to win any games. They're not going to win many games. I'm not going to say that they'll go 0-17, but they're not going to win many games. They know they're not going to be competitive. So I understand I want to throw Davis Mills to the Wolves and just letting them get eaten alive. But at the same time, Tyrod would probably be just a good guy to learn from, because he is a pro's pro. Like Tyrod's never had any issues. Everything I've heard of him out of Buffalo has always been positive. So you drafted Mills in the 3rd round. Why not? Why not just let him? Yeah, I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's a tough situation, because as an NFL team, it's hard to just admit that this year's just gone if we don't have Deshaun Watson. But I could agree with you a little bit there, Ryan. But I kind of lean more towards Mike's side. I think Taylor gets that shot again, and I think he starts for half the season. They start out like 0-5, and if Watson isn't coming back, they might turn it over to Mills to see what they have. At least give them some time to immaculate, or at least adjust to the speed of the game. Let's go to it.
My question is, what happens if Tyrod squeaks out a win or two, and all of a sudden they're knocked out of the number 1 race, and they can no longer get a quarterback? Their fan base is going to go up in arms that they even started Tyrod and let him win games. You know what I mean? Like it's.
I mean, can we be honest? Do we think Tyrod could win with this roster? Like, do we see we're going to get into the offense, but like the defense is in just as much shambles as this offense is. Obviously moving JJ Watt, and there's not much left in Houston, to be honest. I mean, this team is just pretty bad, like on paper. So,
oh yeah.
I just feel like whether you have Taylor's always proven to be a game manager and somebody who can, like, he doesn't elevate players. Deshaun Watson comes in and you're like, oh, I'm in on Nico Collins. I'm in on Kiki QT because Deshaun Watson makes them better. Like Tyrod Taylor's just going to, he's Tyrod Taylor. Like he's going to make plays. He's going to, like you said, he might squeak a win or two out here. But I feel like as an NFL team, like I can't just roll Davis Mills out there. Like Davis Mills was a highly recruited prospect in high school. However, he had some injuries, and like I feel like rolling Mills out there just says, yeah, we're just done. Like, we're just going to fold and go 0-17, be the first team to do that. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like I get what you're saying, but as a fan base too, like, wouldn't you want them to try and win? Like, they have no hope really, but
not really. No,
I don't like how they picked up. I don't like how they picked up all these skill position players in the draft. I mean, like 3rd round pick is like quarterback, 4th, or the next 3rd was Nico Collins, and their 5th was a tight end. It's like, why don't you just rebuild the trenches like Detroit's doing? This team just looks bad. I mean, Davis Mills played 11 of 45 games in college. It
just seems like they panicked. That's my personal opinion. I think the Mills pick was a huge panic. They're like, oh my God, all these quarterbacks went. And like, if we don't have Watson, we got to have at least one of these guys. And so they took Mills. And I think I think was the best at that point. But like, I don't know. I mean, it gets even worse as far as you go to the running backs. Let's just move on to that real quick. Like, you have David Johnson, who's going to turn 30. You have Phillip Lindsay, who has proven he has talent, but kind of fell off last year. And then you have Mark Ingram, who's obviously kind of proven he's over the hump as well. I mean, who is going to be their RB1 this season? Like, is it going to be David Johnson, or are we going to see a 3-headed monster here? Mike, why don't you start us off?
Oh, I think David Johnson. I think he's very underrated from what he did last year. He was kind of a check down back, but even when they checked down to him, he actually produced numbers there. So yeah, I'm looking at David Johnson there. The O-line is okay. I mean, it's the same as last year. They added Marcus Cannon from the Patriots, and that's about it. But I think this is David Johnson's field.
Yeah, and I mean, Ryan, how about, I think adding on to what Mike is saying, I feel like Philip Lindsay's going to get a shot, and I think David Johnson's going to be like a big third down kind of guy, and be their pass catching back because he is so good at it. But I feel like Johnson's going to obviously get some first and second down work. But I feel like if you end up with Tyrod or Davis Mills as your quarterback, there's going to be a very run heavy team here. And do you think at like their ADP, like they're going a little bit later, like do you feel like, would you rather go with David Johnson or Philip Lindsay, Ryan?
Honestly, if I had to choose between the two, I'd go David Johnson, but I'm not convinced or confident in that selection at all. I mean, Johnson's going to be 30 this season. Never had back-to-back seasons of 150 carries. The team is just bad in general. I mean, it's just one of those things where Philip Lindsay's actually shown that he's been talented. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons before last year. I think he's probably more explosive than David Johnson is at this point. I mean, 30 rushes of 15-plus yards since 2015 or 2018. It's 13th most in the league. And I think Lindsay will also be a little bit more trustworthy, seeing as how he's never fumbled. And Johnson's had 17 in his career, despite playing all the limited amount of games. So I think if Johnson starts to show any sign of like deterioration or any more signs of deterioration, or starts having some fumble issues or anything like that, they'll start giving it to somebody a little bit more trustworthy like Lindsay, and even Mark Ingram a little bit, especially in the short yardage goal line situations. I think he'll probably get most of that work.
So if we take away the one game David Johnson got injured, he only got less than 10 fantasy points PPR one game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Mike. I mean, I think David Johnson was extremely underrated for what he did last year. It just seemed like it was never like fancy, you know what I mean? Like he never burst onto the scene, but he was like low-key consistent and like a solid back. And that's why it
was 23, 29, 21.
Yeah, and I'm sure he won a couple people playoffs. You know what I mean? Like at least a game or two. I mean, that's good performances. And I see obviously if Watson's gone, I mean, I'm grabbing as much Philip Lindsay and David Johnson as I can right now, because I feel like those are the main two guys there. And I just feel like you'll see a lot of both of them, because if Watson's gone, they're going to be running so much that I don't think they want to give David Johnson like 300 carries. So I can see both of them kind of being somewhatly viable, both maybe landing in that RB2 range, like maybe low end. But I think it's just something that they're going to be viable, both these backs, personally. Now,
can I ask you a question about Deshaun?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was just thinking about this. Just let me know what you guys' thoughts are about this. Do you think that they're planning on trading Deshaun after this legal, if this legal issue clears up? Because they drafted Davis Mills this year when they know they're not a contender. They could have get an early quarterback next year. Everyone believes that. I'm sure they believe it too. So do you think they're looking to trade Deshaun Watson as soon as his price goes back up, sell at the rise? They're going to sell him mid-season for a quarterback on another team.
Yes, I agree with you at what you're saying there. I think at this point they've realized that probably the offers that they have gotten are probably pretty low, because just even in fantasy at the moment, you know what I mean? No one's willing to toss what the value of Deshaun Watson is, who's a perennial QB5, QB6 in fantasy. Nobody's willing to pay that in a fantasy world. And I guarantee you in the NFL world, they're not paying up at the moment either, because what are you going to pay up? You're going to pay up this absurd price for a gamble, because we don't know the legal situation at the moment.
Right.
So I agree. I think once that's cleared up, if it is, or like once we know a definitive, okay, he's going to be suspended or not, I think teams will be more willing to pay up. The question is, though, like what team would step up to the plate, I guess. And I think that will get definitely interesting and something to monitor over the summer. I think that could be crazy rumors starting if that's all cleared up and they say that he's on the block. I mean, almost any team in the league, aside from maybe 3 or 4, I think would be willing to upgrade to Deshaun Watson. So why don't we move on real quick here to the wide receiver group, which we alluded to, which is very not great outside of Brandon Cooks, in my opinion. Nico Collins, I like. Obviously, being a rookie, though, we have to temper our expectations. But yeah, I mean, do we want anybody in this group outside of Brandon Cooks? I mean, let's say Watson's not there. Do we want anybody outside of Brandon Cooks? Mike?
No, I would want Nico for Dynasty, but yeah, no, I don't want anybody here. I don't have any faith in Tyrod, this team, the front office, none of that. So I'm out on all the pass catchers here. I'm kind of out on Brandon Cooks too. I know that's a narrative every off season, but this time I truly believe it.
I'm going the other way. I'm totally in on Brandon Cooks right now. If I'm a contender, I want Brandon Cooks, but I just think his opportunity is going to be. I think he's a talented guy, and he's going to have a ton of opportunity. So that's the only reason I'm really in on Brandon Cooks, and he's just been a perennial top wide receiver, like a top wide receiver too. So I just feel like he's still going to get his own. But after that, I feel like we said, if Watson's not here, it's going to be pretty run heavy. And I just think that the opportunities aren't going to be there for these guys. And I feel like it's going to be a pretty big split. I think Nico Collins could see a lot of red zone work. Kiki QT kind of came on last year. Outside of that, I'm not too impressed. How about you, Ryan?
No, I agree. I am in on a Cooks, especially at his ADP, wide receiver 45 right now. So I mean, at that ADP, that's a great value for me. But I agree, if it's Tyrod, it does make me a little shaky on him. I mean, Tyrod's only had one 1,000-yard receiver, and that was Watkins back in like 2015, I think it was. So,
he's also never finished the season.
That's true. I'm in on Nico in Dynasty. Like Mike had said, I agree with him there. But I agree with you, Jeremy, on being in on Cook, especially at his ADP right now.
All right. I mean, let's just real quick here, because this is another unexciting thing. Is it Jordan Akins or Breven Jordan? Mike?
Oh, wow. I'm going to go Jordan Akins here.
Ryan?
Akins, is he proven?
Yeah.
All right. I agree. Three-way agree there. All right. Let's move on to the Tennessee Titans. Another team that's kind of rumored to have Julio coming in, which obviously needs wide receiver help. But what did this team, by not necessarily adding a proven wide receiver, do to Ryan Tannehill? Do we think that with a new OC, and obviously we're not sure how much the scheme's going to resemble what Arthur Smith's was, do we still think that Ryan Tannehill is a top 15 quarterback? Mike?
I don't. I just don't. I know I don't like Des Fitzpatrick here. I think it's just AJ, and I think Berkshire might rise up here if anybody does, and that's it. I think AJ Brown's gonna see a lot more double coverage. I think it's gonna be kind of tight. So sees more target, but a little less efficiency.
If they add Julio, does he jump to 15 into the top 15? With absolutely. Julio, you'd say yes.
Yes.
All right, I could agree with that. Ryan?
I have him in the 15 to 17 range. I have Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford ahead of him at the moment. Matt Ryan could drop below him, obviously, if Julio leaves. But, yeah, I have him in the 15 to 17-ish range right now. I mean, he still has an elite wide receiver in Brown and obviously an elite running game. But like you said, Todd Downing coming in, we're not really sure how that's going to work necessarily. But just traditionally the past couple seasons, they went from Matt LaFleur to Arthur Smith, and those two guys went on to head coaching positions, and they've kept the offense relatively the same from as a team. And Tannehill has just been able to be much more efficient in that offense than he's ever been before. So I feel like if they keep that situation the same, if they keep the offensive playbook relatively the same, he knows that playbook extremely well. Obviously, they've been successful at what they've been doing. So, yeah, I mean, I would definitely have him in that 15 to 17 range. I don't really see how he'd drop below that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit outside of you guys. I think that he's above that 15 range. I still think he's a high-end QB2. My main reasoning is obviously he still has A.J. Brown, which is his lead target, and I'm a little bit higher on Des Fitzpatrick, I think, than the consensus. I also don't mind Josh Reynolds. I'm not like totally in on buying Josh Reynolds, but I think he's viable. And I think that Todd Downing was the head OC in 2017 in Oakland, and they were pretty pass heavy. So I feel like this team might switch a little bit. Obviously, they still have Derrick Henry, so they're going to probably run a lot because Mike Vrabel, obviously being a defensive coach, I feel like he loves that ground and pound and play some good defense. So I still feel like that's going to be there, but I feel like they might maybe drop back and throw a little bit more. So I just feel like he's going to have that opportunity. And like Ryan had alluded to, he's been very efficient as the last couple of years versus his like career average. So I feel like I'm still in on Ryan Tannehill as like that high end QB2. How about Derrick Henry, guys? Is it time to let go of Derrick Henry, or do we still think that Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry, who's just going to win you guys fantasy championships year in and year out? Mike, how do we feel?
Does he turn 28 during the season, or is he turning 28 now?
That is a good question. I'm not 100% sure.
So I think I saw this somewhere that the last 10 years, the only startup dynasty running back to be in the top 10 at the age of 28 and hold his value the next year was AP, and that was like 2011, 2012. So I think every year, just like we do with Tom Brady, we're like, oh, he's going to be less productive this year. And we keep saying that for Derrick Henry. And this is actually the first year that I really believe this might be it. Because without, again, the second passing attack weapon, they can just focus on A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. You know, I think they need that third player to take the top off for Derrick Henry to be more operable. But besides that, yeah. I think the shoe falls up on Derrick Henry. Not saying that he becomes like he's gonna be good, but I think this is when we start seeing the decline.
RB1 at least, you think? Or you think he really falls?
I think he's RB1. I think he gets still his lion's share of workload.
All right. I can definitely see that. I don't expect him to produce 2,000 again, but Derrick Henry's one guy that I'm just never going to let go. I feel like he's like AP. Like, I'll let him just retire on my roster as fantasy goes, just because I feel like this offense runs through him. And I agree. I think you could see a lot more stacked boxes. But I just still feel like he's going to be the offense, especially as we know, they didn't really add wide receivers. So they can't just throw to A.J. Brown. Like you said, there's going to be a lot of double coverage in there. And I think Josh Reynolds can kind of take the top off enough to possibly at least garner some respect for the pass game where they're still not going to be able to just totally load up on Henry.
He's still the same size as Corey Davis, too, Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
I didn't know how big he was. I looked him up. I was like, oh, he's similar size.
Right? Like, I always thought he was way shorter than he was, and then I look him up. But honestly, they brought in Josh Reynolds, and Des Fitzpatrick is the exact same size. He's actually an inch taller and a little bit lighter, but they're both very close to Corey Davis. So I feel like they're going to take that and be like, okay, which one of you can take that role, basically. So, Ryan, how do you feel about Derrick Henry?
I'm still all in on him in redraft formats. In Dynasty, I would, as much as I would love to hold on to him and kind of just ride him out, I feel like you can probably get a huge haul for him, especially if you're not necessarily a competing team. But, I mean, you can't really argue with his production the last 3 seasons. I mean, he's averaging 300 carries, over 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns the last 3 seasons. So, I mean, if he takes a slight decrease, I mean, that's still like some people's career years if he takes even a slight decrease. So their offensive line was like middle of the road last season. I think they were 15th according to PFF. So even if that line gets a little bit better and maybe he doesn't see as many carries, but he's a little bit more efficient, then he's still firmly in the RB1 discussion. So I would definitely take him in redraft. I think he's going. I think the last time I looked, he was like RB6 in redraft formats. But in Dynasty, as much as I would love to hold on to him, if I'm not in contention right now, then I'd probably look to try to get a haul for him from a contending team.
Yeah.
I think I agree with that. Like, I know I said I'd let him retire on my roster, so I'm going to double back here, but I agree. I think if I wasn't contending, I'd move on. But I feel like if I was even a middle of the road team, like, you know how quick you can turn a middle of the road team into a contending team? I feel like I'd maybe hold on to him unless, like you said, unless I was getting a haul. Yeah. Let's move on to the next stud that this team has, and that is A.J. Brown. A lot of people are going to argue he is the dynasty wide receiver 1. For me, personally, I think he's top 5. I don't think he's dynasty wide receiver 1. But let's put it into perspective here. I mean, this guy could see 170 targets. If he sees 170 targets this year because nobody else is there, I mean, with his career numbers, you add that up. I mean, this guy could eclipse 1,500 yards receiving, over 110 receptions, and possibly, 10 to 15 touchdowns. So do we think these are numbers that are obtainable? I mean, they're pretty crazy. But do we think that A.J. Brown could see this amount of volume? Or do we think that Josh Reynolds or Des Fitzpatrick or possibly one of the other receivers in their room can take some of that away from him? Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he can. There's no number 2 there. It's a new offensive coordinator. We haven't really talked about their defense, but their defense last year was 27th yards per game and 29th in passing yards allowance. So they could be playing behind more often than they were last year. Not to mention that they purged their entire cornerback room. Like all 3 guys are gone. It's a whole new lineup. So I could definitely see AJ Brown getting more targets, either as the offensive coordinator or just game script related.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, how do you feel? I think I agree there. I think AJ Brown is definitely in line for a lot more targets. Do you think Josh Reynolds or Des Fitzpatrick could at least take the, what did he have? He had the 100 or so targets that Corey Davis had last year.
No, I think not to that extent, but I just feel like AJ Brown is just so talented, and the way, if you dive into his numbers a little bit more, they're kind of unreal in my opinion. Like he was 30th in targets in the NFL last season, only in 23rd in targets per game. That's gonna increase. That almost has to increase for that offense to be successful. He's got 122 receptions, over 2,000 yards, 19 touchdowns in 30 games. Only Jerry Rice, Moss, Larry Fitzgerald, Odell, AJ Green, Julio, Marquise Colston, and John Jefferson are the only others that have 2,000 yards and 18 touchdowns in their first 2 seasons. So, I mean, he's an elite company in terms of his talent. And if that offense wants to be a little bit more balanced, which I feel like they need to be, and like you said, Todd Downing was a little more pass-friendly in his last stop for the Raiders. I mean, they were 30th in passing ratio at less than 50% last season. So if they even see a 50-50 share, he's going to see the 150, 170 targets that you're talking about in the 17-game season. So I'm all in on AJ Brown.
I mean, like I said, I did like a quick, just basic projection off of his like career percentages. And I mean, if he sees 170 targets, it's 110 receptions, 1,922 yards. Like, do we think that's obtainable? Like, I mean, it seems astronomical, but like, it's basically, if he sees that amount it's his career target share almost that he's ever produced. So like, do we think that's a possibility, or are we like dreaming saying that he could get close to 1,900 yards this year in 17 games? Like, just quick.
I think it's insane to project that, but I mean, I want to say yes, but
I do too. I mean, when I punched it in, it's absurd. I mean, he has a crazy career per reception. That's why it's so high. But Mike or Ryan, how about you?
So just to put that into perspective, I just did the math real quick. That would be 113 yards a game. So I'm not 100% sure he'd get to that total, but I guess it's within reason. I guess I wouldn't call you crazy if you made that prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm just saying, like, I just did it quick with his career yards per catch and 110 catches. So it's just quick.
No,
so don't hold me to that. I'm not planting anything there.
I'm holding you to it.
But let's move on to Anthony Frisker real quick. He's a late round darling tight end target right now for a lot of people. Are we in on Anthony Frisker, Mike?
Yes, I am. I wasn't ready for this response, but when Jonnu Smith was out, or Frisker stepped up and looked good. And I believe they actually signed him years ago as a fullback. So he's a fullback converted tight end. So he could run with the ball, which they like too. And yeah, they need number 2 stepping up. And Frisker actually showed it on this team last year. So he's my favorite to be the guy to step up in that roster.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty honestly agile after the catch, more than I thought. Like, I mean, if you turn on the highlights, Frisker actually looks pretty good running after the catch. So, I mean, I'm all in on Frisker too. I think it's tough to see them. I feel like they have to step up. Jonnu Smith had crazy touchdown percentage, so that's why he was so high at tight end 16. But I mean, they both saw almost 300. I mean, they both saw over 300 yards. They both saw over 50 targets. So you figure Jeff Swami's their second tight end right now. I don't see him seeing a ton of targets. I feel like Frisker's going to almost take over this full role, which puts him at over 100 targets, close to 800 yards and 9 touchdowns. I mean, that's definitely top 12 potential. And that's not even with an uptick, obviously, with losing Corey Davis. So I'm way in on Anthony Frisker. And I feel like he's driving up draft boards at the moment. And I feel like he's hard to trade for because everybody's agreeing kind of with what we're saying here. So I wouldn't like pay a boatload for Anthony Frisker, but I'm glad I picked him up like last year when he kind of came on when Jonnu Smith got hurt. So Ryan, are you paying for Anthony Frisker now, or are you kind of just, if you have him, I'm happy I have him, or obviously in a startup, are you trying to grab him?
In a startup, I'm fine grabbing him in the later rounds because I'm not sure what his ADP is. I don't know if you have that in front of you, but in the later rounds, yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I'm not really paying anybody. Like I'm not paying up for a tight end other than say Kelsey if I'm a tight end away from a championship, or well, basically one of the top 3 or 4 guys if you want to throw Hawk or somebody like that in there. But so no, I'm not willing to go pay up for a tight end, but I'm perfectly fine with grabbing him and be happy with grabbing him late in a startup, or if I already have him, then even better because you're ahead of the game at that point.
Should I just also there? Tight end 16 is the DLF at the moment. He's 149 overall. He's around Higbee, Jonnu Smith, Zach Ertz, Troutman, and Cook.
On Sleeper, I saw him overall at 224.
Yeah, this is DLF. This is a super flex as of May, so it might be a little bit different on Sleeper, but so I mean he's up a little bit higher according to DLF, and like you said, Sleeper has him a little bit lower. So I feel like Sleeper sometimes a little bit behind, but
yeah,
I agree. I think somewhere in between there's probably right, depending on your format. I think that he falls a little bit further in some leagues. Maybe tight end premium drives him up a touch.
He's a guy that if he doesn't hit like by like week 3, he's off my team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I'm not holding on to him. It's tough because like you'd mentioned before that like the tight ends from like 6 to 10 are like 20 points apart. And I feel like it's just like if you miss out on the top 3 to 5, even in Dynasty, like you're almost just playing like just like musical chairs, just whoever's like kind of getting hot at that time, and you're just rolling tight ends in and out. So it's not, I don't think Frisker's like a long-term answer there. I mean, he is only 26, but I just feel like they'll probably look to replace him
I'm not
sooner than later.
Unless it's the top guys, and that's it. They want to do like a throw-in, like a guy I like for a throw-in, but that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, if I'm making a deal and someone's like, I'll toss in Herndon or Frisker to get the deal done, like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll do it.
Right.
Let's move on to I think probably one of the more exciting teams this offseason here in the AFC South. We'll talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who obviously had the first pick overall, and they took Mr. Sunshine himself, Trevor Lawrence. Guys, do we think Trevor Lawrence is a top 12 quarterback year one? Mike?
I do, because I don't think they upgraded that offense. I think he's going to have to air the ball out. Not really a believer in Urban Meyer lately, according to what's going on social media, what he's saying out there. But I think this Jaguars team might not be better than last year, but I do think they're going to have to air it out. And he's not like the usual quarterbacks they had. So I think it's possible out of sheer volume.
Nice. Ryan?
No, I agree that it's possible. Just rookie quarterback, obviously there's going to be a learning curve going from college to the NFL, and we have no idea what kind of offense, what that offense is going to look like under Meyer and Darren Bevel. Bevel's always been kind of like a middle of the road type of guy in terms of where his offenses have finished in the NFL. So, I mean, he gets a lot of. He has a Super Bowl ring with Russell Wilson, but I mean that's Russell Wilson, so I kind of take that with a grain of salt. But I'm just I don't know, top 12 purely on volume. Yeah, I could definitely see that, but it's kind of hard to gauge a rookie quarterback on a bad team that wasn't very good last season. Defense didn't improve, so they're probably not going to be very good again. But yeah, possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm all in on Trevor Lawrence being like 11 or 12. I don't think he gets much higher than that this year, but I think, I mean, he's coming off a three straight 3,000-yard plus seasons in the NCAA with 30 plus touchdowns in 2 of them and 24 last year. So I just think, like Mike had said, the defense is still bad. I know we don't know what the offense is going to look like, but I feel like it's going to be slightly run heavy. But I feel like even if it's a little run heavy, I mean, he can have the Ryan Tannehill effect, but be much better than Ryan Tannehill talent wise. So I feel like as long as he's efficient and he takes care of the ball, I think top 12 is well within grasp here for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, as far as their defense goes, their first round picks last year, just off of 1 year production, are just absolute busts. Their best picks honestly came from the undrafted free agency where they picked up a defensive tackle that took over the starting job from a first rounder they picked up 3 years ago. Some undrafted defensive tackle started 9 games for them over that player. So, I
just feel like they're a team that, I mean, you're playing in a division with, say, like Indianapolis, a solid team. You're probably playing from behind against them. Houston,
Right.
if Watson's back, I mean, they're a good team. I mean, that's honestly, Houston would be the only team I think in this division that they would be ahead in a game really on. I mean, Tennessee should probably beat up on them. I mean, so you're looking at a team that's got, I don't even know, I didn't check what their strength of schedule was ahead of this, but I feel like it's just a team that's going to be playing from behind a lot. And I know that they're probably going to want to establish a run because I feel like Urban Meyer's always done that in Ohio State. But I just feel like I said, I mean, even if they get the Ryan Tannehill and Arthur Smith effect there, like the Titans did, I just feel like Trevor Lawrence is very talented, and he's much more talented than Ryan Tannehill. And Ryan Tannehill was able to be a top 12 quarterback in a similar style offense. So I feel like if it's something similar to that, I mean, how can we say that Trevor Lawrence can't be a top 12? And I mean, Joe Burrow, I believe, was on pace last year to be top 12 until he got hurt. So I definitely think it's obtainable for Trevor Lawrence personally. And
Trevor Lawrence has some rushing upside too.
Yeah, that too. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a very good runner, and he's going to have, I think, you could see a lot of that. It's going to be tough because they have so many weapons near the goal line. Like, could you see almost like a Josh Allen effect where like they use his ability to run, spread the field, and boom, there you go. I mean, he could see a lot of touchdown upside that he could take away from, say, James Robinson or Travis Etienne because of that rushing ability near the goal line, I think.
So, Jeremy, I just looked up their schedule real quick, and this is going based off of the yards per app. They play 7 teams all season that ranked above 15th in points per game to quarterbacks.
So that's good, right? I think.
So I feel like
really sure, like off the top of my head, like trying to compute that in my head there. I think that's good.
I mean, it's less than half their game. So I mean, if he's able to perform against some of the bad teams, like when I'm looking at it on my phone, I see a lot of green and a lot of light yellowish. So I think that is a good thing.
Here's my stance, I guess, on the strength of schedule mid-off season. I'm a big fan of strength of schedule during the season. Like once you know what a team is, I feel like right now it's fun. It's like a new discussion because like we know their schedule and we can be like, oh, now we know who they're playing. Like let's talk about this, and it's something fun to talk about in the off season. But I feel like all the teams have obviously, even if you don't improve like your roster via talent, like these guys are practicing, like they get better. It's the NFL. Injuries that people missed last year or opt-outs. I feel like it's too tough to really like fully hone in on that. But I still think that Trevor Lawrence and this Jags team, I think they have a good chance to have some viable fantasy options.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because last year the Eagles and the Chargers were both supposed to be top defenses. I remember that pretty well.
And I mean, even the Bills. I mean, the Bills were a good defense 2 years ago, and then last year, I mean, they kind of took a step back as far as like strength of schedule went. They got a little bit easier to play, I guess you could put it that way. But yeah, let's move on real quick here to this. What got real messy on day one here, this backfield. We have James Robinson or Travis Etienne. Mike, who do you think is the lead back hypothetically, or do we have a 1A, 1B?
Okay, so take this with a grain of salt because I'm a big James Rob truther, but I never liked Etienne coming out. I saw a player that lacked vision. He would run to the back of his line, and he would kick it out wide with his speed, and he can get away with that in college because he was that fast. But James Robinson, everyone wants to talk about his percentage of carries, but he only got over 20 rushes in a game, I think maybe 2 or 3 times. But the Jags last year ranked 30th in points per game, 29th in yards per game, 32nd in rush attempts. So that percentage of carries, I really don't read into that much because they really didn't run the ball at all. And then 31st in time possession, 28th in points per drive, and 31st in score margin. And James Robinson was still successful. So this whole pick baffled me for one. And then Urban Meyer too. His system at Ohio State was out of the shotgun. That's how they ran out there. And the most efficient runner out of the shotgun out of all starting running backs with a minimum of 100 carries. Does anyone want to take a guess who that was?
I'm going to guess you're going to say James Robinson just because of the way you're leading into it. But
yeah, that's right. It was James Robinson. He averaged, I think, 6.5 yards per carry. Number 2 was J.K. Dobbins. Just to be a fun fact there. But yeah, so he matched the system.
Because J.K. Dobbins is great.
He is great, but he's stuck in a committee and behind Lamar. But so I like James Robinson a lot. Clearly, Etienne's a first-round draft capital guy, so it makes most sense that he would take over eventually. But I do think it's gonna be a 1A, 1B situation. Start of the season, James Robinson, and then we'll see in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of the path that we're going to see. I agree. I think ETN's going to get used a lot in the passing game. I know that like Urban Meyer alluded to him being like the third down back, but I feel like they're just going to they might use a lot of split back, like 2 of them on the field at the same time. Or I think it's just you're going to see like a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara style. You know what I mean? Like ETN's going to get used in the run game. J-Rob's going to get used in the run game. And they're both going to kind of get used in the passing game, lean more towards the ETN side. And I think both could be viable, but I think they both cap each other's ceiling. Like, you know what I mean? J-Rob finished RB7 last year. I don't see him repeating that. But I think they're both definitely viable.
I don't see. Oh, sorry. I gotta say some more. No, you gotta wait. But yeah, I don't see Etienne being the third down back. He didn't really block in college. Like Clemson had a great O-line. So that kind of confused me too. And then Urban Meyer saying they want to use him a third down back. He said that no one really believed him. But now we're seeing Etienne take all of his snaps out of the receiver. He also made that statement that Kadarius Toney was their guy. Like he just made that public statement. Like, what's wrong with Laviska Shenault? So I don't know what's going on. College coaches either thrive in the NFL or they bust. So I'm leaning towards the bust side, but we will see. It'll be very interesting to watch this year.
I feel like a lot of people are on that with you, where they just feel like Urban Meyer is just in over his head and has no idea what he's doing at this point. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting situation to monitor. I just feel like both ceilings are capped. I think both of these guys are going to have trouble to really get up into that upper echelon of RB2 range until we really see what this offense looks like. I mean, ETN could get used, like you said, out of the slot, but like they have guys like Laviska Shenault. I mean, they have a decent wide receiver group, so it's kind of like a head scratcher there. I mean, aside from the fact that they're just not going to run a tight end, because we'll get to them in a little bit here, but like they don't have any. So, but Ryan, how do you feel about the J-Rob ETN situation?
So in situations like this, I always try to lean towards the guy that I think is going to have more PPR upside, because that's just the style of fantasy that I play. So I think I'm going to lean more towards the ETN side on this, but at this point, you kind of have to take coach speak for what it is, because they don't really have these guys on the field yet. They don't really have them in front of them seeing what they can do. So I don't think Carlos Hyde is going to be much of anything on early down work. I really don't.
No.
So
I feel like he's going to be that guy that like you need that touchdown from J-Rob or ETN to win your week. And like, here comes Carlos Hyde trotting on.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be on like the 3rd and 1 from the goal line. And you're like, no,
100%. I could definitely see that. But like I said, it's just how I play fantasy football. I would rather take the guy that I feel has a higher PPR floor, and I feel like that's ETN. And Urban Meyer and Darren Bevel don't have any ties to James Robinson, so they have no loyalty or commitment to him. So if they feel like he's just not what they want him to be or what they want on the backfield, they can just kind of say, hey, like, we're just going to run ETN, and I don't know, we'll just kind of go from there. But
here's an interesting thought. Like this just popped in my head looking at the wide receiver list, but Mike had mentioned if Kadarius Toney was their guy, couldn't you argue that Travis Etienne and Kadarius Toney are pretty similar? I mean, personally, I think that watching tape, I mean, they played 2 different positions sort of, but Toney was used a lot in the run game and was kind of shifty, runs decent routes. And now you have Etienne, who is arguably the best pass catching back in this class, possibly, but is also kind of fairly shifty and quick. So do you feel like they just kind of maybe were like, all right, let's grab this guy that's really talented, but like isn't necessarily the best vision in running back, but let's plug him in at the slot, what we would have done with Kadarius Toney. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's an interesting tidbit that you had mentioned. Like, I had missed that Urban Meyer came out and said that. But like, that just makes me think now in like the back of my head, like sitting there and just rewinding in my head, like watching both their tape and sitting there thinking like, I could see where they kind of think like, oh, ETN's like a consolation to our Tony, if that's what they really wanted. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
do you think that could be a possibility that we're seeing ETN's going to, that's why they're having him at the wide receiver position in camp at the moment?
I think it's a possibility. I still
know,
think
it's just
he
like a
wins the
dark horse.
job in the end. Yeah. But I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just popped in my head. I figured I'd just blurt it out. But anyways, let's move on to the wide receivers.
All right.
DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault, Marvin Jones, Colin Johnson, Philip Dorsett, and Jalen Camp. Chark finished wide receiver 49, Shenault 46, Jones was 18, and Colin Johnson was a measly 108. Who is the guy that we want to own out of this backfield? I feel like all of them are pretty young, except for the Marvin Jones, who always outplays his ADP. But for me, it's DJ Chark, and I want to see, Mike, what do you think?
I also like Chark here. I'm in a startup right now, and I was interested in seeing that Shenault for ADP wise, also a sleeper, was 10 spots ahead of Chark. So I thought that was interesting. But I like Chark here. I think he comes back this year. He has a really good quarterback to get those deep balls out to him. He's a deep threat guy. I mean, that's how you get WR1 numbers, being a deep threat. It's very rare for slot guys to get those type of numbers. So, yeah. So my guy here is Chark for the upside.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chark's just a little bit more proven. I know Shenault finished a little higher than him last year, but I just feel like he's a former 1,000-yard Pro Bowl wide receiver. I believe in DJ Chark's talent. And I feel like last year the quarterbacks that they trotted out there were just atrocious. And I mean, they couldn't get the ball to Chark. And Chark's biggest game last year was against J.R. Alexander in Green Bay. So I believe in Chark's talent, and I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to help push him back over that hump. Ryan, how do you feel? Who's the guy you want here?
No, I agree. I think I want Chark here. He's playing for a contract. I mean, he's looking to get paid this season. He's unrestricted free agent after this year. And but in Dynasty, I feel like Shenault might be a value right now just because he might be the only guy standing there after 2022 when Marvin Jones will be gone and Chark will likely be gone if they don't re-sign him. So in Dynasty, I really like Shenault for a value right now, even though his price might be a little steep depending on who you're trying to trade with because they are buying into the Trevor Lawrence type, which they should. But right now, I don't think he's a wide receiver one for that team. I think that belongs to Chark, and he's already proven that he can be a 1,000-yard receiver, like you guys have said. So for me, I would always put preference to a guy that's already established himself and already proven that he can be an alpha receiver as opposed to a second-year rookie player that hasn't done that yet.
So it looks like 3 yeses for DJ Chark.
All
right, let's finish this episode with a very interesting discussion. The Jacksonville Jaguars tight end room. So it's obviously Tim Tebow, right? Like, he's going to start week 1. Like, he should be a, dynasty tight end 5, right? Like, it is Tim Tebow, right? Or is it James O'Shaughnessy, Mike? Or are they bringing someone else in? Should we say?
I hope they bring someone else in, but I think it's James O'Shaughnessy. As far as I heard some narrative about Tim Tebow might not making the team. I think Tim Tebow will make the team, but mostly because they can do some cool gadget stuff with him. But I think it's James O'Shaughnessy here.
Don't you feel like this team is setting up to be this gadgety type team? I feel like that's like you said, they can use Tebow almost. I see Tebow almost being a discount Taysom Hill.
Yes,
I feel like they're going to kind of use him like that maybe. And Travis Etienne, he's going to line up in different spots. Laviska Shenault can be used in multiple ways. I just feel like this team might end up being a little bit more gadgety than we think, 2-3 running backs in the backfield, something crazy out there.
Yeah. They're creating all this buzz just to get the money, Yeah,
it could be. Maybe they're just planning on being bad and just, it is what it is. But Ryan, is it Tim Tebow or James O'Shaughnessy, or are they bringing someone in?
I personally think they're going to try to trade for Ertz. That's my I just have if it were me, that's what I would try to do, because obviously Tim Tebow isn't going to be much of anything. He's never been a tight end before. He doesn't know the intricacies of being a tight end. So he's not going to be like a blocker by any means. He's going to have to be like an H-back gadget type of guy where maybe they run him like a Taysom Hill style of offense for him. But if you want a legit option at the tight end position, why not go for somebody like a Zach Ertz that can give you a year or two and give Trevor Lawrence kind of like that safety valve that most rookies usually need in their rookie season. I just don't think in this point in time, I don't want any of them. I really don't. But
I feel like personally, it's just going to be kind of like an Arizona or Carolina offense where the tight end's not really targeted. I feel like they're happy with James O'Shaughnessy because like they obviously added Tim Tebow. He's really not a competition for James O'Shaughnessy. I feel like he's their top tight end. And as you look at this team, like we've been saying, like they're going to be playing from behind. The defense doesn't look great. They're not really a Super Bowl like type team. And I feel like trying to trade for Zach Ertz puts them back a little bit. Like I would like that. I agree. I think, Ertz. But I feel like they could look at this as like a Arizona or even like the Bills. You know what I mean? Like teams that don't really target the tight end. I feel like that's what you're going to look at. You're going to look at a team that rolls out 3 wide receivers with maybe ETN in the slot or 2 running backs back there. Like I feel like they're going to kind of not really focal point on the tight end position. And I think they're just happy with James O'Shaughnessy. Like I said, they moved on from Josh Oliver, who couldn't stay healthy, but like he was more so, I guess you could say, like a physical freak to an extent at the tight end position. So like, I mean, he was profiled pretty well. He just couldn't stay healthy. So obviously they must be pretty happy with O'Shaughnessy. And I feel like if you look back at Ohio State, like they're not really productive tight ends. They're good when they're called upon, but like they're not like crazy number guys. So I could see, I don't know. I could just maybe see it being like a team that doesn't really use the tight end in like the receiving game.
What about David Njoku, who wanted to get traded last year?
Yeah, I mean, like, I could see them making a move like that. Like, if they're adding a tight end who's a little bit younger, understandable. But for me, like, Zach Ertz puts them back. Like, I mean, I get he would make the team a little bit better this year, but, like, they're not going to win the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, aside from Trevor Lawrence coming out and being, like, the next Joe Montana or, like, Brett Favre or something crazy, like, I mean, this team isn't going to be that great. So trading for Ertz, who is nearing the end of his career, I feel like just almost sets him back depending on what they have to give up for him. I mean, if they give up like a third or something, maybe it's worth it. But like, I just feel like Zach Ertz is out for them, especially that. I don't know if Ertz has a no trade or like I don't know if he has a clause like where he can choose where he kind of goes. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking hockey there a little bit. I don't know if it.
I think he does, but yeah, I'm not sure. I think he does.
And you know what I mean? If he does, like, would he want to go here? I mean, maybe. I mean, it's South Beach, but I don't know.
Do you think this is done though? I mean, he's only 30. He's not like it's not like he's at the point where he's like the point of no return. Is there any chance that was just Philly and just being bad and not liking the organization and just kind of needing a new place to go?
I think that's a lot of why he wants to move on. I just don't think. I mean, 30's not super old, but I mean, for a tight end, I mean, aside from like Travis Kelce, who's kind of been doing it, I mean, 30, he's got 2 or 3 years. I just don't see the Jags being a team that is in that position in 2 or 3 years that they're really going. He probably wants to win another Super Bowl. You know what I mean? I feel like he would want to go to a team that has that opportunity. And as I'm just saying, like, as a Jags organization or as a fan, like, wouldn't want to give up too much for him, knowing that my team's not like a Super Bowl contender. I mean, anybody could be. I mean, someone could come out of nowhere. I just feel like this team isn't set up to really be like super good in the next year or two.
Jeremy, you're talking about a team that just signed 33-year-old Tim Tebow and drafted a running back in the first round after already having a running back.
And do you think they're going to win a Super Bowl in 2 years? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're not smart.
Exactly.
I see what you're saying. It's coming around. I just don't know. Mike, do you have anything to add if they're going to bring in Zach Ertz?
No, I just hope James Robinson wins the job.
And Mike has it here first. James Robinson forever.
James Robinson for tight end, just any position. Just get him on the field.
Right? Yeah, actually, we're moving J-Rob to tight end. I could see Urban Meyer saying that. I could see it. Yeah,
he's going to be fine. He'll hike the ball to himself.
Yeah. All right, let's close this show out here. Mike, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you and if you got anything going on?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ff_dirtymike. I've been making a lot of appearances on podcasts lately. I love them. Have a great time. I love talking football. And I'm also a writer for Yards Per. Might be coming out with an article here pretty soon. I was talking to Jeremy about it. So, yeah, we'll see. And also, thank you guys for having me on. Really appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem. It was our pleasure having you on. And definitely if you drop that article, it's going to be one that I read. And I think that everybody should check out. I think it's going to be definitely pretty interesting. Ryan, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mackie_FFB. DMs are always open. I know I've gotten a handful of messages here and there about draft strategy and trying to figure out different things like that. So keep those coming in. I'm always willing to answer questions and do anything I can to help and or at least give some form of advice to push you one way or another. But Mike, thanks for coming on and filling a spot. We had kind of a hectic situation going on with our guest spots the last couple of days. So we appreciate having you on, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And you can find me at PopesFFH on Twitter. Same as Ryan, DMs are always open. You can find any of my articles over at yardsperfantasy.com. You can also find some over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. And until next week, everybody, take care and stay healthy.